On this week's video version of our podcast, Trail Cam Radio, we're catching up with David Ferianc of Michigan. David is a lifetime Michigan native and has learned to hunt whitetails in one of the most pressured states in America. And the lessons he's learned and how he's improved as a hunter over the years and how he's transferred those skills into out-of-state hunting trips where he tags some really good deer. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you haven't, be sure to check out his Whitetail Cribs episode and check out all the deer he's caught up with over the years. And let's go ahead and get right into this video podcast.
Lights,
camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got $30 in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio.
From the guys at Exodus.
All right, we're live here with another episode of Trail Cam Radio. We just got done recording a Whitetail Cribs episode here with David, and it's gorgeous outside. We've been in the truck. We've been inside often. We're taking the opportunity to record this outside. If there's a little wind feedback, we have to deal with it because we just want some fresh air. But thanks for hanging out a little bit longer to record a podcast after kind of hearing some of your stories. Once we checked out the house here, we're like, oh, we want to hear the story, hear it again, and share it with everyone else.
No problem.
So we were with John Eberhart yesterday.
Yep.
And as we were kind of talking, it sounded like you were, a Michigan deer hunter.
Yep.
Loved it, but maybe not having the level of success maybe that you would like, or you're looking for different things. You read John's book, and I'll let you kind of tell the story of how you tracked him down and how your relationship kind of went from there.
Yeah. So I think I was the typical Michigan hunter for the longest time, and meaning the phrase that everybody says to everyone. What do people tell you when you tell them you're about to go hunting? What do they say? They say,
Good luck.
Good luck, right? That's the thing that everybody says. They say good luck. And for me, I wanted to take as much of the luck out of it as possible because luck was not working for me. I do not feel like I'm a lucky person. And so for me, I was like, man, everybody's wishing me good luck. I'm wishing my buddies good luck. And I'm seeing does, or I'm not seeing anything at all, or and I think that was the typical story for most Michigan hunters. I got to the point, I killed a deer or two on my own. 93, I killed a doe. Didn't kill another deer till 98. Spent 5 years either not seeing anything or shooting and missing or whatever it was. I got really tired of that, and I started reading a lot of books. I thought, there has to be something in here, these people that are killing all these bucks. And I read a lot of books on behavior instead of just hunting, and that helped out a lot, and I started to see more deer. But 2003, I stumbled upon a book called Hunting Pressured Whitetails, and it was actually just sitting on a pile of nothing in mire, and I was like, what is this book? It was just random, like it was calling to me. And so I picked this book up, and it's by a guy named John Eberhart, and I read it cover to cover. And I said, this is too hard. I'm not going to do that. This guy is crazy. This guy does crazy stuff. But the proof was, on the back of the back cover. I mean, I was like, this guy's from Michigan? I found out he was from, I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's doing all this, and he's not paying to hunt? And it emboldened me. I applied about 10 to 15% of it in 2003. And I started shooting bucks. I started shooting small bucks, I'd killed a buck or two before that, but I started killing them more consistently. 2006, I said, this isn't good enough. I really want to buckle down. And I didn't go, full out yet. What I did was I started using scent lock properly. A lot of people buy scent lock or scent blocker, or they don't even exist anymore, or use scent products. And there is a proper way to use them. I am a big believer in activated carbon, just like John, not because of John, but because I've seen the proof of it for myself. I don't pay attention to the wind. I know that's not popular. I know a lot of people just shut the podcast off. Just hear me out. So you'll get the phrases, a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. Okay, why did I go from killing a buck every couple years to killing a buck every year? I only have 3 seasons since I started using activated carbon properly that I haven't shot a buck. In the last 10 years, I've shot all of my biggest bucks. There has to be something to that. So the timeline would go 2003, I find John's book. 2006, I start taking it seriously. 2010, I adopt it fully with his scent regimen, using a saddle exclusively, and all the things that go with it. And in the last, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, skip 16, 17, 18, I shot Pope and Young bucks or close to it. That can't be a coincidence. So, so that's where it went.
So Michigan is, I think it's our number 1 downloaded state, or it might be Pennsylvania. It's one of those two. I can't recall right now. But you said you made 10 to 15% adjustment and started to see some of that success. Was that the scent lock, or what were some other things that a lot of Michigan hunters are doing that were maybe smaller tweaks looking back that were very instrumental in having more opportunities?
2003 to 2006, I used scent lock, but I didn't use it properly. But the tweaks I made when I first read John's book, the number 1 tweak I made was I started hunting higher. Okay. And it's not just, for the sake of, being higher than, most people aren't hunting as high as they think they are. Everyone will tell you, I'm hunting 20 feet. If you go look at their stand, it's 12. It looks high because you're standing and you're looking down.
Yeah.
Do you know how high 30 feet is?
It's
Have
high.
you seen
We talked about that. Yeah.
30 feet is higher than the ceiling in the shop I work at.
Yeah.
Okay. It's way up there. Now, I don't hunt. I do have one stand that's that tall. Most of my stands are about 25 to 27 feet, and that's up there.
And that's top rung, or the actual?
That's my feet.
Okay.
Okay. So you actually feel like you're higher.
Right.
Okay. And the reason for that is it gets you out of the deer's peripheral vision. You can basically do jumping jacks up there if you want, and you're not gonna get spotted. Using a saddle, you're hiding behind the tree. But let's go back. The question is, what did I change then? That 10 to 15%. I started hunting higher. I started scouting right after season ends. That's a huge one. That's when all the sign is out there. I started prepping stands in February and March, and then leaving them alone for an entire season. How many people go out, me included back in the day, in September, shoot in October, and poking around and setting a stand and sweating it up and making noise? So scouting and stand prep early on in the season, and hunting higher were the things that I adopted, and I saw an immediate change in how many deer I saw. After that, the scent regimen. And the scent regimen isn't just buying a product and wearing it. That's not the scent regimen. The scent regimen is everything. Everything that touches your body better be clean. Everything that you put in your backpack. How many people bring their backpack out in the woods and they've bare skin handled their binoculars, their rangefinder, their grunt calls, everything. You use those things all year, and you go, I'm going to be scent free, and you throw all those things that you've been touching all year in a backpack, and now you have a giant human scent wick out in the in the stand with you. That kind of stuff. Paying attention to the very small details that very few people pay attention to, and you're not taught. Michigan is steeped in gun tradition, and let's face it, if you can take 100, 200 yard poke, you don't have to be as careful about your scent that you do when you are bow hunting and trying to get deer within 15 yards of you. So that made the big difference.
One thing to circle, I want to touch base on. I think that a lot of guys have this question. I think most people that listen to the podcast are doing a lot of postseason scouting.
Yeah.
One of the challenges with postseason scouting is being able to look at the sign that you see after the season and trying to relate that to a time frame inside the actual hunting season.
Yeah.
So is that early October? Is it pre-rut? Is that rut sign? Is it post-rut sign? When you're doing this, you're going in, doing your postseason scouting, you're leaving that spot alone, and it's prepped until it's time to go back in October 1 or wherever. How are you looking at some of that postseason sign and prepping those spots, and in your mind deciding the right time frame to go in and hunt those spots?
Okay. So there could be a lot of deer sign that's left. Like, let's say, well, scrape is a scrape is a scrape. If you find a scrape right after the snow melts, that scrape was made during the rut. It was made by a buck. You know that for sure. If you go out in January and you're seeing these heavy trails and you're like, oh my God, I got to get a stand here. Okay, well now you might want to think, because that's late season pattern, and that's not going to do you any good until late season. What I'm looking for is what was left during the rut, and I'm going to hunt that during the rut. Or spring scouting or postseason scouting. It depends on what postseason. Everything's postseason until October 1st. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is, here, I'll break it down for you. I've scouted during season. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to hunt that spot. Okay? So let's say you tag out early. I've got nothing to do but scout. I can go anywhere I want. I don't even have to wear scent lock. I don't have to wear anything. I don't have to pay attention to the wind. I don't have to do anything because I've already tagged out. If I haven't been lucky enough to tag out, there are times when I will go scout something during the season that I'm not going to hunt that year. And so now you're seeing fresh sign that's being made and stuff like that. Postseason, if you're going right after season ends, you are going to have some late season activity, but when you're looking at rubs, scrapes, funnels, and stuff like that, all that stuff's going to relate to the rut. Early season, you want to go right when the snow melts. You want to find that apple tree that's about to blossom that year. That's your early season food source. Oak trees, white oaks, setting up on those, making sure that they have perimeter cover though. There's a lot of things that it's just a slight variation. This guy finds an apple tree and this guy finds an apple tree. Okay, well this apple tree is out in the wide open. This apple tree has thick cover all around it. That's the apple tree that's going to have a better chance of having a big buck at it. So my postseason scouting, I'm looking for 2 times a year. I'm looking for anything for early season, and that's going to be food source or a primary scrape. Okay. And then I'm looking for rut activity. When I find a lot of rubs, I find a really good funnel that's going to funnel deer as they're traveling. I find a lot of scrapes or something like that. You can hunt those scrapes early and then leave them alone until the rut. But apple trees and acorns, the only time I'm going to hunt those is probably the first week of October. And then after that, I'm not going to hunt anything that doesn't look like a rut funnel or something.
Obviously we're in Michigan, super high hunter density, big pressure.
Yeah.
Typically, when do you see that pressure have a negative effect on deer movement? Is it the first couple of days? Is it the first week? The first 2 weeks? How long do you think it takes for the whitetails to really feel that pressure?
They're already feeling it October 1st because you have youth season traditionally in Michigan has been the last weekend of September or sometime in September. Sometimes veterans, stuff like that. They're feeling it a little bit, okay? You still have a chance of catching a big buck on his feet at the last 30 seconds of light, and that really is. You're sitting out there waiting for the last 30 seconds of light because that's when that mature buck's going to come in on a food source. But I would say fully by the 3rd day of October, there is so much inundation of human presence in the woods that I don't hunt much the second The second full week of October and even the third full week of October, I don't hunt much. I start going back out. I start getting excited again around the 25th of October because now you're starting to get close to Halloween. And if you catch a cold snap during that time, a cold snap's good anytime. But when you catch a cold snap within 5 days either side of Halloween, that's when I've killed all my bucks, almost all of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would say let's be generous and say from October 5th to October 25th, there's 20 days in the middle there that it's over. Those first 5 days, if you don't kill a buck in the first 5 days of Michigan, you know, it's not impossible, but it's just not highly likely. There's just too much pressure. And I'm talking pressured lands. There's always going to be the exception to the rule. But I'm talking whether it's public or private, high-pressured lands in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. You got a couple days in the beginning of the season, and then you have the rut, and those are your windows. You know, everything else is really difficult to take a buck.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And it, you know, being from the Eberhart lineage, I guess, it lines up with a lot of the stuff that we talked about yesterday with John.
Right.
So,
you know, the thing is, you can read about it. I've read about it, you know, from multiple sources of different things to do, and I really like John's books. And I consider John a good friend now, you know, and the guy's a master. But when you start seeing it for yourself, that's the big difference, you know. So you hear what he says, and you're like, okay. And a lot of people dismiss it because it sounds difficult or odd. But you start seeing it for yourself, and it just lines up on its own. And that's from his, you know, 50 years of doing it or 60 or however long it is. You know, you start seeing it for yourself, and then it's all of a sudden it's not words on a page anymore. It's like, this guy's right. You know, that is how it is. And then you experience it for yourself.
I think you know, we were talking about this in the hotel last night, or maybe at dinner, or in a truck on the way over here. Something's passing conversation between us. Guys that kill more deer than everyone else, they obviously think about things different than everyone else.
Right.
That's why the results are different. So it's you know, when you talk to someone and they have a different perspective and they have that many deer under their belt, like you should pay attention. Yeah. Regardless of what they say. They could be full of crap. Maybe they're not full of crap, but you should at least listen and ask yourself the questions. Okay, what is this guy doing different? Why is he, you know, what's the success from? Why is he asking these specific questions? Yeah,
and I'll say that's what I aspired to. I was like, you know, to coin a phrase from my favorite movie, what one man can do, another man can do. And that stuck with me my whole life before that movie even came out. I was like, if Fred Bear can do this, why can't I do it? And then it turned into, if John Eberhart can do that, why can't I do it? You know, and do I have the wall that John has? No. Very few people on the planet have the wall that John has. But I started much later, and the strides that I've made in the last 10 years are proof to me that, you know, when you see somebody that's doing that, they're doing something right, and they know something. And the most important thing to know is what they're doing different than most other people. That's the important thing to know.
Yeah. You touched on weather just for a second.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of people are on the same page. Like, they're looking for that cold front to roll in, either hunting the backside or the front side of the front. But there's a lot of other stuff that go into some of the variable, we'll call weather conditions, atmospheric conditions, barometric pressure. What's your, and we asked John this, we asked a lot of guests this question. What's your take on the moon? Is the moon like phase, transit time? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you not pay attention to it at all? Do you live or die by it? What's your take?
I'm right in the middle. I don't live or die by it, and I don't dismiss it. For me, moon phase has everything to do with when the deer are going to move. I don't know about so much the gravitational pull as it is just plain light. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people want to go, it can't be that simple, right? No, I think it is. You have a full moon. This is what I used to do with my buddies, and I was on to something, but I didn't know it at the time. But I was like, let's go. We were in northern Wisconsin, and northern Wisconsin is basically like hunting Michigan pretty much. It's a little bit better. But I say, let's go for a drive and see when we start seeing deer in the fields. And man, if you saw deer at 10 p.m., you were going to see deer at 10 a.m. the next day. It was almost uncanny. It's a 12-hour. So they have in my opinion, they have a 12-hour main shift, and they have a 6-hour in between that's a minor. Now, a minor to me might be when they get up to stretch their legs, they grab a leaf or two, they grab an acorn, they bed back down, and they don't travel much. That's the in-between. But there's going to be a major feeding time every 12 hours. And I started to notice that if I saw deer, if you go out at 10 o'clock and there's no deer in the fields, you either were too early or too late. So the moon how the moon plays into that is you have a bright moon and the deer are out there at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning because the moon is so bright. You're going to get a lot of midday activity. You got a new moon where the deer are not as comfortable being out there because they can't see predators and they can't see what they're doing quite as much. You're going to get that early morning, early evening because the deer want to feel safe. They're going to bed down. They're not going to feel comfortable, and they're going to be eager to move at first light because they're like, okay, well, I can finally see. I don't feel so vulnerable. But then their 12-hour feeding program is thrown off. A lot of times when you see deer in the morning, my evening hunts, the deer don't move till after dark because if they're moving at 8 a.m., 8 p.m. would be their next major feeding time. Now, this is all my opinion and my observation, but there's not a whole lot of times when I have a fantastic morning and a fantastic evening. Usually you have a great midday or a great morning or a great evening, even when you hunt all day. And I think that has a lot to do with how much light there is at nighttime. So that's what I use the moon for. I'll go, okay, there's only a sliver of moon. They're going to move probably pretty early in the morning, but not in the evening, you know. Now, how the moon relates to the rut, man, I've gone all the way back and forth. I used to like Charles Alsheimer. I used to love that. Yeah. Me and my friends used to plan trips on that and then go, that guy's full of garbage, you know, like sometimes he'd hit it. But you know what? If you're negative all the time, you're going to be right 50% of the time. And the same thing's true the other way around. True. So, you know, ooh, surprise, the rut's going to be in November. You know, okay, great. Here's the thing, weather, moon, this is, and I'm going to simplify it for you, and people are going to go, well, I know that. Be in the woods. That's it. Be in the woods. Any chance you get, be in the woods. You only got 45 minutes isn't enough time. Bull. I've killed deer on a 45-minute hunt before. You know, well, I can only sit, you know, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Do it. You don't know what's going to happen. But you can start to predict it. And the longer you hunt, you get feelings for it. And you go, you know, real simple way. Full moon, I'm hunting the middle of the day. I don't care what time of year it is. Full moon is going to have midday activity for the deer because their cycle's thrown off. Now, to deer, that cycle just moves. It just shifts, you know, a half hour at a time every day, in my opinion. And I think that you can, there is something there you can bank on. So
yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I just had a question. So let's say, for example, you're seeing deer at 10 p.m. And I'm keeping this in mind now with cell cameras. So if you're seeing deer feeding at 10 p.m. at night, and you're thinking, okay, maybe that 10 a.m. 12-hour cycle, how would you go about setting up or trying to hunt that movement, knowing that they're at this destination food source, or you know they're feeding this location at 10 p.m. Where or how do you plan on setting up or thinking, you know, strategically to hunt the next day?
That's a really important question because, you know, as I was saying it, I was thinking, okay, I need to clarify. You know, rut hunting is rut hunting. You just be on stand all day. Okay, you just do that. Don't even worry about what the moon says. You know, October, you know, 25th to November 15th, you just be on stand because it can happen anytime. The moon thing, that's usually when I'm trying to do a hunt in the October lull, or it's getting close to opening day and I want to see what the deer are going to be doing. Because chances are the fields that I'm looking at with the deer, I don't have access to hunt those fields. But what it tells me is that they're feeding at that time. So if I have an early season food source, like an apple tree or a white oak that's dropping or something like that, I'll use that for that. But I'm like John in that I'm getting on stand ridiculously early.
How early?
I am still not full Eberhart. Nobody is.
Yeah.
Nobody is. He gave me some advice one time, and holy smokes, I did it. It was hard to do, but he was like, he goes, why don't you try? I had this apple tree, and there was a nice buck coming to it, like 130-inch buck coming to it, and he was just so nocturnal. And once in a while, I'd catch this little glimpse of him. And John's like, you can hunt that in the morning. He goes, but you're going to want to get there 3 hours before daylight. I was like, okay. And I did it, and the buck didn't show up. Actually, the buck did show up. I'm sorry. I don't have a visual, but a large-bodied buck came through about an hour before light, and then I never saw anything else the rest of the day. It was probably him, but it was just too dark still. So how early do? I try my hardest to be on stand an hour and a half before light. Anytime I do a morning hunt, I want to be on stand an hour and a half before light. I crept up on it because I was like, this can't be right. And so I would do the half hour before light, and then I would do 45 minutes, then an hour. And I started to find that deer pass your stand if you're in a good spot. They pass your stand before light. Here's the thing that's a killer. Here's the thing that kills most people's desire to do this. You're actually not on stand for that first light encounter. That's not why you get on stand that early. You're on stand that early to let them pass your stand, bed down, and then they get up an hour or two after daylight. They stretch their legs, they walk around, they grab a couple more acorns. That's why you're on stand that early. However, when you get on stand a half hour before light and that deer's bedded only 60 yards from you, you'll never know that you spooked them. So that's the thing that people need to wrap their heads around. People are like, Dave, I got on stand an hour and a half before light, and, I didn't see anything. What time did you climb down? 9 o'clock. Okay, well, you should have stayed on stand until 10, 11 o'clock because it might have happened.
So those early morning spots, those are tight to bedding.
Yeah.
Those are tight to bedding.
Yeah.
You're banking on those, beating those deer back to their bed.
Yeah.
Bedded down.
Well, that's important. You guys keep asking really good questions because, when you've been doing it a really long time, you assume that people know what you're talking about. Yeah. See, because if I'm hunting a food source, it's in dense cover. If I'm hunting a food source in the morning, which is really hard to do a lot of the time because you're going to spook deer, it's near, or even if I'm hunting it in the evening, it's within security cover. I'm not hunting a field edge. Right. I'm not hunting soybeans. I'm not hunting, field edges. Corn is an exception. If the corn is up, I'll hunt a field edge because deer feel it's security cover and food. But, I'm not hunting over a food plot and hoping a deer walks out in the wide open. If I want to kill a doe or a young buck or something, that's different. But if I'm going after a mature buck in a high-pressured state, anything that I'm getting on stand for that early, I'm trying to kill a mature buck, and it's going to be in thick cover. So yes, I'm sometimes right in the bedding area or sometimes right on the edge of the bedding area at a food source.
Are those bedding areas, are you identifying those through postseason scouting? Is that historical experience on that property, or how do you going through and identifying those?
Yeah,
those areas?
Bedding areas, I hear some hunters talk about beds, deer beds, like, I was hunting this buck's bed. Okay. Bucks bed all over the place. Bucks will have 10 beds, 15 beds, and you can't guarantee they're going to be there. So I don't hunt a bed. I hunt a bedding area, meaning a high trail system through dense cover. Okay, cattails, tag alders, super thick saplings. And when you have multiple trails converging, you have rubs from the previous year, maybe even a scrape back there. I'm gonna see a good buck back there. It's finding that heavy cover that has a good trail system and buck sign in it. That to me is a bedding area. They're not going to not bed there. It's thick. And John probably told you this. Pretend like somebody's trying to kill you. Where would you hide? That's where I'm going. When you see that trail network through cattails, and guess what? Very few other people are hunting there. And I'm hunting a gnarly, crooked tree that you could never get a stand in because I'm using a saddle. And it's, in this cattail marsh that has multiple trails going through it and rubs from the previous year. Yeah. Even if I don't see a buck there the first couple sits, I know he's there, So that's a bedding area to me.
Got it. No, that's one thing that this trip has ignited is the importance of cover.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes people get caught up with food,
Yeah.
or they get caught up with all these different things, and
Yep.
at the end of the day, cover, I think, is pretty easily to argue that it's king.
It in heavy pressured states, and especially Michigan, that's where it's at. If I'm hunting a spot, I want to be in a spot where a deer could disappear in 2 bounds. If a deer can disappear in 2 big bounds, that's thick enough. If not, and sometimes that includes woods. I overlook a ton of public land where if I can stand here and I'm in the woods and I can see 200 yards, I'm not the likelihood of me shooting a mature buck in
Pretty
woods
damn
like
low.
that pretty low.
Yeah.
Can I shoot a doe there? Yep. Young buck probably. Big buck? Nope.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go where it's so thick that and you can get too thick. There is such a thing as too thick when the grapevines grow through everything and they can't get their antlers through it. But that thick cover with multiple trails, break lines. Break lines meaning this type of cover meets up with this type of cover. There's always a trail on it. There's always a trail weaving in and out of it. Now, go a step further into the thick stuff. There's a fainter trail on it. I'm going to follow that till it intersects the bigger trail. That's, and that's a good place to start.
That's something that we see with cameras. So I guess my question is, when you see that secondary sign that's it's a little bit less noticeable, a little less defined, is that like a key, like aha moment, like, oh, okay, a big buck's more likely to use this because it's inside cover, sign's a little fainter?
Yeah.
Is that something that kind of
I
pops
always,
off in your head?
This is where I pay attention to the wind, not for myself, but I say, what's the predominant wind? West, northwest during that time of year. You get actually northwest, north, that kind of thing. And I go, where is this trail in relation to the heavy cow path trail? Okay, it's on the predominantly downwind side of it, and it's a fainter trail. Why? Because there's a lot less bucks in Michigan than there are does, right? So you have 20, 30 does per buck in Michigan. To me, and then I go, what would I do if I was a buck? Am I going to walk right on the edge where there's wide open on this side? Nope. I'm going to walk the downwind side of the main trail inside the security cover. Yep. So you put all those things together, and then you find out, I love intersecting stuff. I love stacking sign. I call it stacking sign. These 2 trails to come together, and there's a scrape, and there's 3 rubs leading up to it. You just stacked like 4 pieces of sign. That's worth hunting to me, especially if there's security cover.
Yeah.
So one of John's rules that I follow religiously is I'm out on public land, I'm scouting, and I find this awesome scrape, and I didn't have to do any work to get to it. Guess what? Nobody else does either. So I find this awesome scrape, and I just walked right to it, upright the whole time, didn't have to cross any bodies of water. I don't care how good the scrape is, I'm not going to hunt it. Other people are going to find it. There's probably a beer can if I look around, so I'm not gonna waste my time,
Well, great. I was thinking, yeah, you have an interesting story, and I'm half tempted to just send people to the Whitetail Cribs episode, so they have to. We get 2 hits then.
Right,
so we
right.
do have to transfer it over. But what's your take? Do we run it here, or do we make them go watch on Whitetail Cribs?
Let me see. I have no idea where we are. We're at 30 couple minutes. It's your call. You're the official host. It's your call.
Let's run it.
Yeah.
They came here.
All right.
And then they can get the visual of the buck on the Cribs
Absolutely,
episode.
Yeah.
So
All right.
as we were kind of talking, you born and raised in Michigan.
Yeah.
And you made the venture out to Iowa, which many diehard Michigan hunters that we've come across do.
Yeah.
And they all kill big deer every time they go there. I haven't talked to one person that I went to Michigan or Iowa, didn't kill anything.
Yeah.
Every one of them's killing a buck.
I don't want to jinx myself because actually I don't even believe in jinxing because I don't believe in luck. But I've drawn 3 Iowa tags, and I have killed my biggest buck every time I've gone to Iowa each time. So that's something. They got bigger and bigger, and not that that's always going to be the case. It'd be hard to top that last one I killed in Iowa, but yeah. So you want the story?
Yeah. So
okay.
let me tee it up for you
Okay.
too. So
Yeah.
there's on the Whitetail Cribs. I assume we got a shot of this as well of like the article. You were hunting in Iowa for the first time.
Yep.
And just walk us through how'd you get access to this piece, and just run it from there. And this is a real treat, honestly.
Give us the same version that we got when we first came through the door, like word for word, because that was.
I'm gonna need some space.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I had called over 50 people out of the back of a plat book. Okay, so I found properties that were near my buddy's properties. My buddy has 55 acres, but they have, a significant amount of people hunting it, and so I needed to find my own place to hunt. So I did look into a couple public pieces and stuff like that, and I was fine with hunting public, but if I could find private, I wanted to find private. My buddy got in on the action, and he started looking for places for me too. I called a bunch of places, and most of them said no. And we're talking Zone 6, Iowa. Like, everybody's hunting.
The Mecca.
Yeah. So everybody's saying no. I got 3 hits that were maybes, and then that's because their wife said, you can hunt it if you want. And then the farmer gets on it. No. My Uncle Jack hunts that. Okay. So finally, my buddy goes, dude, it was so close to his property. He went right down the street. He goes, there's this old crotchety man named Norman. I said, okay. And so we ended up getting permission from this just cranky old farmer. And it was just for me at first, the permission in 2011. And I bought a guy that, a gas gift card. Every year I hunted there, I did that. And I only hunted it twice, actually. But so went in and I never even got to scout it or anything. So I decided I was going to go in off of some topo maps and some aerial photos and pick a couple good crossings, and there was a place next door that was 2 square miles of, I call it a booner factory, 2 square miles that was off limits.
1,200 acres.
Yeah.
Almost
Owned by a doctor who was very adamant about people not crossing his fences. Now, the rule in Iowa is if you shoot something that goes across the fence, you're allowed to go get it as long as you don't have your weapon. But this guy kind of wanted to make his own rules, and he was very strict about people not going there, and that'll come into play later. So that rule right there explains my actions later. So I find this spot. I saw a 150-inch buck the first 5 minutes I was in Iowa. I wasn't even hunting yet. I was just scouting and setting up a saddle spot, and I saw a giant. And then, there's a lot to this story. I'll try to shorten the less important parts, but I had damaged my release while setting up one of my spots, and it fouled up on me on 3 giants. The Drurys would have shot these bucks, okay? They were huge, and it fouled up, and I was getting so frustrated. I finally ended up using, don't throw away those old releases. Keep them in your backpack, because I ended up using my old release, and I had 1 day left to hunt. And wouldn't you know, the last day I have to hunt, it's 35-mile-an-hour winds, gusting to 50, sleet, rain, snow, everything. And my last day to hunt, I don't get up in the morning because it just seems useless. And so me and my buddy slept in. I said, I'm not even going to go to that farm. And we went out to eat breakfast, came back. And as we're pulling in to camp about a 120-inch 8-pointer, which was a giant to me, okay? Goes running right through camp. And it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I said, man, buddy, I got to get out there. And he's like, I don't know, man. It's real windy and sleety out. I said, yeah. I said, man, this is my last day in Iowa. I got to go back to Michigan empty-handed. I'm like, I just don't like it, you know. And I've seen so many big bucks. I had one stand that I set up that I never hunted. And I said, that's the stand I'm going to go sit. And I got out there at noon. I mean, it was smack dab middle of the day, noon. And I wasn't sitting there 20 minutes. And here comes a nice big, huge-bodied buck. His rack, I couldn't decide if it was Pope and Young or not. It didn't matter to me. I was from Michigan, and that was the biggest buck that I would have ever had. And so he came in. I'm getting ready to shoot him. And as he crosses the creek, he turns around like a 12-year-old Labrador in like 10 circles, and then he just beds down, just plops down right in the bottom of the creek bed. And I was like, well, I'll just have to wait him out, you know. And this cedar bough kept blowing in front of him. The wind kept gusting it, and I thought about shooting him a couple times while he was bedded, but he was 20 yards away. It was a weird angle. Cedar bough kept blowing in, felt like a video game, and I was like, I don't want to risk it, you know. The neighbor's fence was like maybe 40 or 50 yards from there. I just didn't want to mess it up. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to climb down. I'm going to kill this buck right in his bed, and that's going to be the best story I've ever told. And I was like, you know, and even if I mess it up, I don't have a buck now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how can I mess this up, you know? So I climbed down one rung at a time. Every time the wind blows, I move, because it would be dead still, and then it'd be 35 miles an hour, and it'd be dead still, and it'd be 50 miles an hour. And every time it got dead still, the buck got really spooky. Now, something I forgot to tell you guys earlier in the story, it's a little treat for you. As I'm climbing down, I'm halfway down the tree, and this like 140-inch 10-pointer comes running in down the hill, sees my buck in the bed down there, and I don't know what kind of clout he has, because he's a few inches shy of Pope and Young, but he looks up at him, and the other buck turns around and kind of scoots off. So I thought I was going to get a shot at this 140-inch buck halfway down the tree. I've got my linesman belt around the tree, and I'm moving it as I move down, so I could have shot him if he came in, but he ended up scooting off, and I'm kind of glad he did. Even though he was bigger, I'm glad he did. So I make it. It takes me 20 minutes to get to the base of the tree. There's thorns and briars at the base of the tree. I got my feet all tangled in them, so every time it's quiet, I can't move anything. The thorns are digging into my legs. I'm trying to balance, you know, I can't take my bow off my hand. It's on my bow arm, and it has an arrow nocked, and I'm trying to balance using just one other hand that has my release in it. And so I feel like I don't have any hands, and I'm trying to untangle my boots out of the thorns every time the wind blows. So I start sneaking towards the buck, and I can't see him because the weeds are about 4 or 5 feet high, weeds and thorns. And I just peek my head up a little bit, and I'd see the top of his antlers, because the bank was about 5-6 feet deep, you know, so I could just see the tips of his antlers. And every time I get closer, I can see another inch or two of his rack. And so I'm crouched down, half like almost duck crawling. I look like one of those Russian dancers, like, hey, like that. I'm kind of sticking my legs out and squeezing forward, and I'm pushing my arrow through the stuff, trying not to get it caught or open up my blades, you know, because I had mechanical blades. And I pushed my way through, and I'm about 10 yards away, and this buck is just laying there, and he looks at me, and I see in his eyes that he knows something's wrong. And I said, the next gust I get, I have to draw. So wind gusted up. I drew. His eyes got kind of big, like he's like, oh man. And it like the wind gusted and it just revealed me. I drew, and I was like, man, the wind's going to snap back and close these branches, and I need to do this. And I take the shot, and I hit him what I thought was good. He jumps up, and he immediately collapses. And I'm like, oh my God, I smoked him, you know, like I must have broke him down. And he gets back up, and in a millisecond flash, I go to grab for another arrow. Nope, my quiver's up in the tree. I go to grab for my knife. Nope, that's in my backpack, up in the tree. I don't have anything, and I don't remember letting go of my bow. I found it on the bank later. I don't know if I threw it, slipped off, whatever it was, but the next thing I knew, I saw, almost out of body, I see my hands grabbing his rack as he's going up the other side of the bank. And his rack is eye level with me, and I pull him backwards like, no, you don't. And I grab him, pull him to the side, and immediately he falls down, and I'm like, yeah, I got him. And he started standing up, and there was nothing I could physically do to keep him from standing back on his feet. He had that much strength left in him. And I was pushing down and using all my weight, everything I had, to keep this deer's nose down. And he just stood up and said, nope. He got up, and he looked at me. I wrote an article, and in the article I said, he looked at me with the eyes of a horse in a flame-engulfed barn. He was mad, and he wanted to get away. I can't blame him for that, but I also can't let go at this point. He's either going to get away, and I know it's stupid in my little caveman brain. I was like, must have deer, and also I was afraid to let go because I was afraid he was going to get me, because he didn't look like he wanted to run away at that point. At that point, he looked like, no, we're going to do this now. Now you woke up the beast, He would jag his head backwards, and I'd have to use my arms to stop it from going backwards. And when I pushed myself back, then he'd try to kick me with his back legs. And so then I would move away, and then as soon as he felt a little bit of tension release on his antlers, he'd jag his head backwards again and try to stick me. And so now we're going around like a merry-go-round, and I don't know how many revolutions we made, but I remember thinking I was literally getting dizzy doing it, and I was fatigued like you wouldn't believe. My legs were shaking. My arms were running out of strength. And on one of the, I started to come to terms with the fact that, this is a cool way to go out. I hope they find the deer so at least they know what happened to me. I was starting to go through this, and I said, no, I can't do this. I've got to get out of this merry-go-round circle that we're doing here, and I can't let them get me. At one point, I shoved my palm between one of his G2, and I jammed my elbow in his rack this way, and he shook his head so violently that it really hurt. What I was trying to do, I was trying to free one hand because I could see the arrow, and I wanted to get a hold of the arrow and screw it around in there and try to kill him. And every time I did that, it was scary. Like I was like, he's gonna get me. And so all of a sudden, on one of the revolutions, I see a puddle underneath a fallen tree. So this root system had come up, created a puddle of water that was there, and I shuffled. We did a couple of revolutions to get him closer. I pushed my weight towards him, and then I wrapped my leg around his two front legs and pushed with everything I had, and we both went tumbling down, and I got his nose under the water. And he was still pushing one nostril up out of the water. And I remember thinking, I thought I had him again, and I remember thinking, he is so strong. Like, that one nostril would get up above the water, and he'd take a breath, and I knew he was getting a little bit of water in him, but I was like, I probably already smoked that long anyway, so what does it matter? And finally I pushed down, and he takes one deep breath, and I felt him relax a little, but then he went into this death, like, this is life or death. He tried to get up again. I saw my opportunity. I grabbed the back of the arrow. I palm pushed it as hard as I could a couple times, and finally it broke through something, and it felt like it got something good, because it just went in deep, and his nose went under, and I saw the crimson in the water, and I had nothing left in me. I literally laid over on him like a pillow and just laid on him and sat there, and I went, what just happened?
That is insane.
And
I've heard the story twice, and I'm still asking myself that.
How long was that?
That's
whole event, because I'm sure it's tough to have a frame of reference of how long it was.
I've done this before, because somebody asked me that question, because it takes so long to tell the story, but it happens so much faster than that.
Of course.
Like right now I'm envisioning it, I shoot. He goes down. He gets back up. I'm on top of him. We go around, I don't know how many times, half a dozen, I don't remember. And then I get him. Honestly, it might have taken a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that whole thing, or less, maybe a minute, because we were spinning fast enough to make me dizzy and feel like I was going to lose my legs, under, and I did not want to fall.
Oh, he would have gored.
Yeah, he would have got me. And I never knew that deer would try to kick you like that. Like he was trying to kick. He got my leg a couple times, but it probably took, I would say maximum it took 2 minutes, but it might have been faster. And then it was over, and then I laid there, and I showed him the article. You can see the deer is just soaked, and there's mud, there's tracks in the mud. Those are all our tracks. My buddy came up and he goes, "What did you do?" Because there was just like deer and human boot prints in this giant circle all the way around in the bottom of the creek bed. That was my first Iowa buck. Was shot him in his bed and then had to drown him in a creek, and then hand-to-hand combat.
Well, the thing that you touched on was the neighbor. So that neighbor, the guy owned the 1,200 acres, 1,280
You wouldn't have been
acres.
able to go look for it.
It was relatively close,
yes.
and that is what was going through your mind the moment you grabbed the hold
When
of.
he hopped back up, I forgot to say that, but when he hopped back up, he was heading towards that fence, and that just triggered something in my mind of I can't let him get across that fence. And so that's why I did what I did. I don't think I would have done any of that if I wasn't in Iowa. It's my first Iowa buck. It was the biggest buck I'd ever killed at that point, and that guy told us not to go on his property.
Yeah.
Like, all those factors, I was like, nope.
Last day of the
trip.
Gotta
do this.
Emotions are high on the last day of the trip.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, do or die.
Yeah.
Literally.
So,
Yeah, it was.
yeah. Almost literally, yeah.
You could be the baddest deer hunter on the planet. I don't know another human being that
seems like it should
has
be a movie
the nuts to go do something like that.
I wish somebody was videoing it, or I wish I had a trail cam up, for all that. But, I told my buddy when I got back, and he was like, I was also out of breath. I was like, I had to drown him in a creek. And he was like, what? And it took me the rest of the day to really get the story out, because it was like I had to keep replaying it in my head of, did that just happen,
Well, huge adrenaline dump.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so you can do incredible things when you're, in danger. So.
And then you had to get surgery on your wrist.
I did have to have surgery on my wrist. I ignored it for about a year. I didn't really know what it was from, but eventually I couldn't pick up a cup of coffee without it hurting, and the doctor said that something had done some terrible damage to my ligaments, and I knew what that was, but I didn't tell the doctor the story, actually. It's not a popular story outside of hunters. So.
No, I can imagine.
So, yeah, I did have to have surgery on that wrist. He jerked it. When he shook his head, my arm was a rag doll. Like,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Tough animal.
Yes, sir.
Well, that was, I think that's a good... I don't know where you go from there. So you can check out that buck, see kind of the article and everything else on Whitetail Cribs. It was incredible to meet you, and really enjoyed seeing the house. And thank you for recording the podcast with us. Really good stuff. So
absolutely, thanks for having me, guys.
It was awesome. If you want any of these crazy whitetail hunters to track you down, is there a place to do that, or do you like to stay kind of a little elusive?
I do like to stay a little bit on the elusive side. Like, I don't have Facebook. I don't show my daughter's face online or anything like that. So I'm kind of off the grid. But I do have some articles though. I have 2 articles in Woods and Water, old past issues, and I do have a clip of my opinions in an article coming up by Adam Lewis. And I wish I could remember what magazine it is right now, but I cannot. So
support magazines, buy some magazines.
Yeah,
and
I think
it's
coming out. I think September. I think that magazine's coming out, and I want to say it's Bow Hunter magazine, but I can't confirm that. But yeah, that's what I got. And you know what? Honestly, I'm not selling myself short, honestly. But if you want to know how I hunt, you could read John Eberhart's books, because that is how I hunt, and I do feel like, for high pressured lands, that's the best way to do it. If you live in Iowa, don't worry about it. Just enjoy your season. Go ahead, play the wind, have your 14 stands, and I'm not knocking that. That's awesome for you guys, you know. I just don't have that luxury here, so.
Yeah, and if you're in Michigan or Pennsylvania, too late to buy a point this year, but it better be on your calendar for next year.
Yeah.
But cool. All right, we'll certainly appreciate it. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
And head over to the YouTube channel and check out Whitetail Crips.
Sweet.